Hello everyone, welcome to another video I've done for Streamer Tactics, and today I'm going to be talking about the EverDrive 64X7 like I did for the article for the website. It's not going to be as much in depth as what I wrote up, but I just wanted to cover the basics of why I think this cartridge is one, brilliant, but two, really good for people who want to stream N64 content and use original hardware without having to shell out an absolute fortune on original cartridges, especially for me. I'm in the PAL area, so getting hold of NTSC copies isn't easy, and not everything was released in PAL. With the EverDrive X7 I can do all that and a little bit more. So a bit of a background, a very quick background. Crix makes EverDrive 64 as he does with the other ones. It's not my first EverDrive, probably won't be my last. My first one is the Mega EverDrive Pro, which I use for both the original Mega Drive Model 2 I've got over there, and a Mega SG as well. Goes really hand in hand with the Mega SG. The N64 I use here is a PAL model, but it does have Tim Worthington's RGB mod, and the reason for that is because the N64 doesn't natively send out an RGB signal, and the OSSC that I use to upscale and to actually plug into my capture card, it only accepts RGB signal. So I'm just going to bring up quickly my setups just so that I'm full disclosure of exactly what I use. So when I sprinkle in some video footage into this video, you can see exactly how I did it. So like I said, I've got a PAL N64 console with an RGB mod in it. It does have anti-blur, but I think anti-blur is also included in the flash card, so I'm covered either way. The AV cable I use is retrogamingcables.co.uk's SCART lead. I highly recommend them. The quality of the cable does make a huge difference, and I do cover that in some of the other videos I've done, such as how to stream a Mega Drive and whatever. The quality of the cable makes a huge difference, so that is the exact cable I use. The capture card I use is an Elgato HD60S Plus, because it seems to accept almost anything the OSSC throws at it. And if you look online, a lot of people can have problems with different capture cards, but this one is really consistent. The monitor I use for when I'm actually looking at it and playing is the ViewSonic VX32762K, because again it accepts all the resolutions that I throw at it without any issue, and it looks great. There is a 4K version, but I also use this monitor for work, so there's no need for me to go all the way there, and it costs a bit more. So the 2K goes all the way up to 5x on all the retro consoles, and the streaming computer I use is a MacBook Pro M1 Silicon. So not the easiest one to work with when you're actually streaming on Twitch. You know, Windows is much easier, but that is Anyway, this video isn't about how to stream an N64, although I will be making one of those videos. It's more about why I think the EverDrive 64X7 is a cracking little product, and why I really recommend it for people who want to stream N64 games. I encourage them to do it with original hardware, because the timings are exactly as they were intended by Nintendo, and there's that feel of authenticity. So there are plenty of videos out there on how to use an X7 or an EverDrive 64, comparing it with other flash cards that do more or less the same. But this video won't cover any of that. There's plenty of guides out there, and it's dead easy to do, to be fair. Or if I could do it with a Mac, with only 2 USB-C ports, then anyone else can do it with a Windows computer as a doddle. This one is just about why I think it's great for streamers, and what it actually means to them if they were to use it. So like I said, it's dead easy to set up. That is absolutely not an issue. But you will need a modded N64 if you're going to be using OSSC, and to be fair, RGB mod makes the picture better anyway. So the reason I recommend the EverDrive 64, first and foremost, is authenticity and original hardware. I watch a lot of streamers who do speedruns mostly on retro consoles, and I actually do prefer it when they play on the original hardware. I find it's authentic. I am watching the game as it's meant to be played on a console that I remember playing it on when I was a child. Obviously, I still have those consoles. So I think the authenticity for me is a major plus point. So when I'm playing, although the EverDrive 64 isn't actually the original cart, it is the original game files that it's running. So the timings, the resolutions is exactly as it's meant to be. You know, warts and all, to be fair. if there was an issue on the original game, the issue will also be on the EverDrive. So yeah, authenticity on original hardware is something that I think a lot of people would be interested in. So if you're a small streamer and you're trying to get into it, it gives you a bit of an edge. You know, it's easy to set up an emulator, it's easy to play an emulator, but playing on a real N64, there's something special to it. So the next, and you know, the whole point of the EverDrive is you've got access to the entire N64 library from various places that have ROMs. Obviously, you should only be playing ROMs that you actually own yourself, so as a backup. But essentially, for those who want to, you can play any game you want on original hardware, and this is the point I'm trying to make. So if you wanted to own the original Resident Evil 2 N64 version, it's £200 for that. And for new streamers, people who maybe be working full time and trying to stream on the side, it's just unfeasible. You couldn't do it. It's too difficult to afford to buy them all. Some consoles are worse than others. So I've got a Sega Saturn over there. Some of the games on the Sega Saturn are extremely expensive. I've got a Dreamcast over there, and some of those games are really quite rare, quite hard to get a hold of now. I suppose you could say about any console. Mega Drive in particular, if you wanted to play Streets of Rage 3, for example, I think it's £180 for Streets of Rage 3 PAL version. It's just unfeasible, it's ridiculous. And if you do own the original, like I do for some of them, you tend not to even want to get them out of the cartridge or the sleeve because they are that expensive and precious. So the other point is it saves money. N64 games are just hard to come by, and they're quite expensive, and even the quality of the game that you might get is dubious, especially if you buy them from N64. You just don't know what you're going to get. So that's another one. Preservation, I think, is one of my main things now. So I do collect games, and particularly the games that are CD based. I don't want to actually play them. I don't want to scratch them, because once they're scratched, they're gone. An example I've got is Silent Hill. I think it's £90 now if you want to buy it from CX, and the thought of bringing it out, accidentally scratching it is just. So I'd rather play that on PlayStation Store or something like that, and not play the original. EverDrive allows me to preserve my actual games and still play the original on my backup flash. Ease of setup. So I've done a couple of videos of how to stream old retro consoles, and it really isn't as difficult as it sounds, especially for people who are new to the whole setup and what devices you need, and what cables you need. It's not actually that difficult to stream really old consoles on Twitch in really high quality. The X7 makes it a bit easier. It's user-friendly and easy to set up. And it does if you get an RGB or not, it's quite easy to connect to a PC to get that out. Faster loading times. So the N64 had fast loading times to begin with because it's cartridge based, but the EverDrive 64 X7 is faster because it's from an SD card. But it is limited by the N64's actual bus, which I think is 23 megabytes per second. But some games you can feel it more than others. So yeah, that's an absolute benefit, especially when you're streaming online. Cutting a couple of seconds off a loading screen on an 8-hour stream, it adds up. You can give your viewers a bit more content. It's also got some creature comforts, so you can back up your controller packs to the EverDrive. A bit of a word of caution here, so you will still need a controller pack for some games, but this will come back the controller pack to the X7, so it's like a backup in case something happens to your controller pack. Another caveat to bring up as well, sometimes the expansion pack, if you were to put it in, can do some funny things with an upscaler if it doesn't have a frame buffer. The OSSC doesn't, so I actually only use a jumper pack because the resolution stays the same. But if you were to have an expansion pack, sometimes there's a bit of a delay if a game switches resolution. I think Resident Evil 2 is an example of that. When you go from in-game to the inventory, I think it goes from 240p to 480i, and it doesn't pause the game while it transitions. A zombie will bite you. It's got support for homebrew games. Download from the internet and actually play on a real Nintendo. You can do that with an EverDrive, but also you can make your own homebrew games with this. I think the X7 is the first one to have brought this micro USB port. So you can actually make your own games and test it on a real Nintendo 64 using this. Equally, you can actually just put other people's homebrews on this without having to use an emulator. Quite a niche, a rare one. I don't know how many people would be interested in this, but you can play 64DD games without actually needing the 64DD. Just like the EverDrive Pro can play Mega CD games, but can play, I don't think you can play 32X, but you can play Mega CD games without even needing a Mega CD. This thing can play 64DD games. Not that there are many, and not that they're actually that good to begin with. Another upside of the EverDrive 64X7 when you're streaming, especially with speedruns, it plays games from any region and it will output in 60 Hz or 50 Hz depending if you're playing PAL and NTSC. So what this means is generally speedrunners will always go for the 60 Hz version because it's literally faster. And the quirk of the N64 is it's the game that decides on the Hertz and not the actual console. This is opposite to say Saturn, for example. PAL Saturn playing NTSC games will still be 50 Hz, but an PAL N64 playing an NTSC game will be 60 Hz through RGB, so you can get better graphics or clearer graphics and the faster gameplay at any time. And it's got anti-aliasing and the 60H version, which I've just mentioned. So my modded N64, so only slightly modded, gets rid of the blurring effect. But the EverDrive 64 will also do that for you if it doesn't. And lastly, it's perfect for modern TVs and streaming. So I don't have a CRT. I have no interest in getting a CRT. They're big, they're expensive, and through tinkering with a load of settings on the OSSC, making sure I get the right cables, the right mods, the ViewSonic monitor I mentioned earlier is a brilliant monitor. I don't know what a CRT will really bring to the table to make it worth the space and the cost, because when I'm playing N64 games, Saturn, PS1, Dreamcast, I'm playing it on this 2K monitor here, I have absolutely no complaints. It looks brilliant, but I did specifically sort this monitor out for that reason, so that's why. But yeah, if you don't want to mess around with CRT but you want to play original hardware, it's great. And I'll throughout this you'll probably see some clips, and all these clips are from the games playing off an EverDrive 64X7, and through my monitor you can see for yourself the quality. As is usually the case, the quality that your viewers will be looking through their laptops or whatever when you're on stream is higher than the quality that I'm actually looking at the monitor. So to make a bit of sense, that when I'm playing the game, I'm looking at the monitor here. It's it's stretched over I think it's a 32-inch monitor, whereas if you're watching on a laptop like Twitch on a laptop like I do, it's a much smaller screen, so there's not as many stretched pixels, which is even better quality. But throughout this video you'll have seen various clips of the games I've been playing anyway, and you can make your own judgments on whether the quality is high enough for you to go for an EverDrive 64 on the setup I've got to stream original hardware N64 games in the most efficient way. So just to summarise here, I've been waffling long enough. The EverDrive 64X7 is brilliant even if you didn't want to stream. If you just wanted to preserve your collection, or to just play the N64 without having to spend an absolute fortune getting hold of the games, the EverDrive 64 is the ultimate cartridge. It's pretty much all you need. It will save you a fortune and it's so easy to use. But if you wanted to stream N64, this is how I would recommend to do it. So I've already mentioned how I find that people who stream retro with original hardware, I will always prefer to watch those than people using emulators, just because of the authenticity, the timings, and the actual nostalgia, because I am watching and playing the games as they are intended. But I highly recommend this cartridge. Crix and his team have done a wonderful work on every EverDrive that they make, and every time they release a new version, it just gets better and better. So by no means that the X7 is probably the last one they'll ever make. Who knows what's next? Actually, controller pack built in is something that is possibly on my wish list. It's annoying to have to get it on a controller. I'm not sure if it's even possible, but it would be quite nice to have that. It's only got 64DD, so there's not really anything missing. So I'll probably finish the camera there. I think you get the idea. I love it. I enjoy streaming it. I enjoy playing in it. And I think if you are thinking about delving into streaming some N64, you've been doing original hardware up until now, get an EverDrive 64. You won't regret it. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and visit streamertactics.com for other retro and modern articles. But other than that, have a good day.